Jackie. It has been a while. I'm sorry it's been a while. This month just didn't seem appropriate to be just going about business as usual, considering everything that happened with George Floyd and all the other Black people who have passed in that time, and just people finally starting to understand in a more, hopefully, widespread way, people like me, that there is a serious systemic violence, systemic racism, and everyday racism that exists, especially here in the United States, And I am happy that there have been protests, and I'm happy that Las Vegas, where I live, has had protests. Because, for all the people who are like, oh, people should just be like more peaceful about it and stuff. And then I'm like, they were peaceful before and you didn't listen. And that's, what I want to say here is Black Lives Matter. They mattered in the past, matter now, and they will matter in the future. And that's all I want to say about that. Not because I want to bulldoze over it and go to the next thing. I don't really. But there's enough white people like me saying shit about it without wasting y'all's time about it, okay? Like, I didn't see it because I didn't grow up in the Black majority community, like as far as like the minorities being the majority. I grew up in like a Latinx community in Salinas, California, growing up in the early 90s. So I saw a different side of it, but it was still people of color, in this specific case, Latinx community, and the two worlds that exist for the majority of the people there at that time. I don't know what it's like there now. But there's just like that law, like there's that whole cycle of when people are not given opportunities due to systemic racism and everyday racism, right? And those economic and fiscal opportunities keep passing people by. People are forced to commit crimes in order to make ends meet a lot of the time, or to survive, okay? And then what happens? They get caught. Those are extra hard, like the law cracks down on them harder than it would for white people. And that cycle just keeps going. They go to prison. Like, it's just like this insidious, awful thing that happens to people. In the case when I saw when I was a kid, Latinx community. Cases we're talking about right now, Black community. So, if there's any question about where my channel stands with that, or to use more less ableist language, where my channel is with all of that, that's where I'm at, okay? And also, clearly, Black trans lives matter, okay? Because it is also Pride Month, and they have always mattered. They still matter. In other words, they matter yesterday, they matter today, they matter tomorrow, all right? So, I'm here to talk about a weird movie that I watched a while back, and I'm sure that there's a lot of videos about this because it's so interesting but bizarre, which is the movie The Lighthouse, okay? We're not talking about Virginia Woolf's novel, The Lighthouse, even though I've read that, and I do love that book despite how weird it gets. Virginia Woolf's a very interesting author and person. Was. Poor thing. The Lighthouse was actually, it came out, was it last year? I was like, yeah, it came out last year. So it's horror, it's drama, it's a period piece version of those two genres. I love period piece movies only in that I like them as horror films, usually, because there's something spooky about that I like. Like, for instance, I like Guillermo del Toro's Crimson Peak, right? I liked that movie, The Lodgers. They had a Netflix, even though it had some pretty cringy elements to it. Actually, just like Crimson Peak, weirdly enough. You'll know if you watch it. I'm sorry ahead of time. But The Lighthouse itself was directed and produced by Robert, I think it's Eggers. I think that's how you say that name. And it was neat because it was trying to recreate that whole aesthetic of like the old-timey films. Like I even noticed that some of the birds kind of didn't look, I don't know, it was weird. The seagull, the whole thing with the seagulls kept reminding me of Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. And it used, I guess, according to Wikipedia, it used a 1:19:1 aspect ratio. So it was like the square. So when you go and watch it, even on Amazon Prime, like I did, it's not going to be the widescreen, right? Okay, so they even went and tried to make the film look like that, like you'd see on like a Turner Classic Movie channel or something. And it's also in black and white. So just, again, trying to emulate that old school, that feel of old school horror. Now, it has William Dafoe and Robert Pattinson in it. And I guess a neat tidbit of information before I get further along is that Eggers actually originally set out, I guess, with the intention for it to resemble Edgar Allan Poe's bit that he wrote, The Lighthouse, but I guess it's still a contemporary take on it, but it was a little weird to watch. I might get into some spoilers. Just know that the rough synopsis of it is Robert Pattinson and William Dafoe. William Dafoe is an elderly lighthouse keeper who's pretty interesting and very eccentric, as you probably would have to be, or the job would make you that way, being isolated from society for a while, right? And that lighthouse keeper just like, oh gosh. But anyway, so he plays that character. Robert Pattinson plays like the assistant that's coming to help him, and there's just all sorts of things going on in this. When I was watching it, I kept trying to figure it out because Eggers also did The Witch, right, which came out a few years ago, another period piece horror film based on a Puritan, right, a Puritan setting in early colonial America. I had a lot of mixed feelings about that film for a lot of reasons. It's not that it isn't spooky; it's spooky, but it's because I don't. I had mixed feelings about The Witch because it portrayed witchcraft as part of worshiping Satan, but like only that in the film. But if you held it to the lens of puritanical values the film was trying to portray with the characters that existed in it, then it would automatically be like viewed that all such ideas or worshipped outside of their beliefs would automatically be equated with that kind of thing. Not saying that's right. That's just probably their attitude. So that made it doable for me. I was like, oh no, actually, that's kind of from a religious studies or interreligious studies point of view. When you apply it back to a period piece, that's unfortunately accurate. So Eggers has layers to the storytelling, to characters, big on characters. I love that. And atmosphere, which if you have watched any of the movies on the brain, the YouTube videos that I have on my channel, you know I am a sucker for atmosphere. I have to have that atmosphere, because if I don't, I'm just kind of like, oh, this isn't as immersive, therefore it may not be as engaging. For me, personally. I don't know for you, but for me, personally, it may not be as engaging. So The Lighthouse is as simple as that. It's basically you following what's going on between this lighthouse keeper and his help. And it's pretty graphic in some spots. I was kind of like, oh, you're really going to show that, and this is an American movie? Wow, I'm kind of both simultaneously like, and also kind of impressed that you went there, because we have like such a prudish attitude towards sexual gratification and nudity in this country. I'm sure that has nothing to do with, things like the Puritans partially settling things or anything like that. But all the people that got ran out of Europe because they were even too conservative for them. But it's just it's so interesting. I don't want to spoil it, but I have to tell you that The Lighthouse is one of those movies where you're going to go watch it and you're going to be like, okay, this is awkward and a bit painful. Like, you literally want to just go off. on the the old guy several times. I can't remember his name. My brain's like, they have names. What were they again? Because I watched this like a few weeks ago. And when I was watching it, I started to realize something, because the lighthouse keeper had some very specifically territorial feels towards the lighthouse herself, which I found rather horrifying and intriguing. So if you catch my drift, okay, almost like the I wouldn't call it like the fetishization of the lighthouse, but almost it's getting pretty different there. And there were a number of times where I was like, this is starting to resemble another tale that I know from mythology. It's not a spoiler, but ancient Mediterranean mythology, okay? More specifically, ancient Greek mythology. I'll leave it at that for this segment of the video. And the farther we got along, it caused me to question it a few times. I'll admit, I got thrown a few times, like, well, maybe I'm wrong. But no, I was right. So yeah, there's actually also like arguably some sort of weird tension between these two men that I am not sure I was imagining it or if it was a thing. Especially at one part, because it's almost like the elder guy thinks that this young guy is like, he starts almost acting like, you know, you don't like my cooking. And I'm like, what is this? Like a sitcom? Like, or not a sitcom, like a soap opera? Oh, you don't like my cooking. You're seeing someone else. You don't like me anymore. Like, it's horrible. That's where my brain went. And it is kind of bizarre because they don't really have, I'm trying not to touch my face. They don't really have anybody else there, right? So they're stuck there. And everything that can go wrong starts to go wrong because of what one of the lighthouse keeper's assistant does. And the lighthouse keeper explicitly warns him not to do this one thing. Do not ever harm the birds. Do not harm the seagulls. And of course he loses his shit and like kills one of them. Kind of brutally, actually. So everything starts going downhill from there. And it's a lot of humankind versus nature and the natural forces in this film, which is also fascinating. It explores what happens when somebody's on the run and they change their name and they take the shittiest job possible because it's a job. And hey, man, this is back in the day where, you know, we don't have IDs as much and I can go and start over somewhere else, right? So there's all of that kind of intrigue going on. There's so many, no pun intended, but like undercurrents that are happening during this movie, The Lighthouse. And again, that's what I mean by Eggers is really good at storytelling and really good at portraying really intriguing, even if, you know, unsettling characters. So yeah, you can tell I obviously enjoyed it. I'm kind of debating about whether or not say what the thing was at the end that was part of the mythology. I think you all will probably know. If you don't want to know, thank you for watching. Please hit the subscribe and ring the bell if you found this interesting. Normally I do a little bit more in depth with like some screenshots and things from the film. I may add that to this video. It depends on what kind of time I have to edit things. But yeah, thanks for tuning in if that's true. If you don't want the spoiler, gonna do the spoiler right now. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so the mythology I started thinking of was, first off, I started thinking about Poseidon, right? And the elder, the lighthouse keeper, because of the strange imagery that we initially see when he's peeking up and sees him at the top of the lighthouse, and there's that tentacle and stuff, right? And I'm like, is this supposed to be the sea god? What's happening here? Otherwise known as Neptune in Roman mythology, in their pantheon. But anyway, the big thing that I started to feel partway through, because of the light being a thing and the birds and this tug of war between, I want to tend the light, no, I want to tend the light, right? Prometheus, right? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go Google Prometheus and read his story about what happened when he stole fire from the gods and gave it to humankind. It literally happens in the movie. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to say. That was the spoilery bits. Those were the bits where my brain was starting to go, what is really the message here? What's really happening? So, I'm sure there's a lot of different videos that have much more astute analyses about this film. However, I just wanted to give a general overview. I can English, promise. I wasn't listening to Italian earlier, and I'm now like, I can't. Yes, I can. So, yeah, it was a really fascinating ride. It was one of those moments where you start watching a film and you go, you know what? If I make it through this film, I'm probably not going to ever forget it. And you're right. So, this is Kelly with Eclectic Entries. Again, thank you for making it to the end of the video. Thanks for spending some time with me. I tend to like to do talks like this. Again, like I said before, sometimes they're more in depth and have different graphics and stuff. It just depends on where I'm at with editing. I like movies like this. I like more serious horror. Sometimes I'll watch older movies. Every once in a while, I'll watch a Western. And I like anime and stuff like that. So please remember that Dark Season 3 comes out at the end of this month. And I will be doing videos for that because I love Dark. Dark is on Netflix, okay? And for those of you who don't know, The Lighthouse is available on Amazon Prime. So, cool beans, I am ready and just so ready for Dark Season 3. I have to know what happens. Yeah, oh my gosh. Oh, and also, for those of you who are maybe book nerds as well, in case there's like a few of you, I've mentioned it before on my channel, but I'm really excited because S.A. Chakraborty's last installment in her trilogy, the Devabad trilogy, is coming out at the end of this month as well. So I will be buying that. All the good things. All the good things are coming out. So until next time, you take care as you're able. I know that in my household, we're still doing self-quarantine unless we need to. We've been trying to like order groceries and then pick them up and socially distance while doing that and things like that. So yeah, that's what my family is doing because like all of us have different things that make us a high-risk category. So yeah. Until next time, bye-bye.